What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to another Heart Over Height episode. Today we're going to be going over some of the most underrated offseason moves by the NBA and just seeing how that's going to shake up the league and everything like that. So if you do enjoy this kind of content, do me a huge favor, smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're on the road to 12K, and comment down below on who you think will shake up the East or West this upcoming season. So without further ado, let's get right on into it. So, of course, in the offseason, we've seen a ton of movement. We've seen a lot of big-name players, Paul George move, so on and so forth. We've also seen smaller deals happen. I want to focus on those smaller deals. Now, I'm not talking DeMar DeRozan to the Kings because I think that's a big deal. But first team that I want to talk about is going to be, once he clears waivers, Russell Westbrook. Russell Westbrook being added to the Denver Nuggets roster is an extremely underrated move. This guy was once a former MVP, averaging a triple-double at one point, and he is on a very friendly contract. They need to be able to replace what KCP provided, and although Russell Westbrook can't do that, he adds something else to this roster that can be, you could see there's obviously a big, huge hole in the shooting guard spot because Strother's not going to be the guy. Now, the question here is whether or not Westbrook will come off the bench or whether he'll be with the starting unit. I say specifically, you put him with the starting unit. I think that he's a pretty good pairing alongside Jamal Murray because Jamal can stretch the floor a lot. So you honestly could move Jamal over to that shooting guard spot or Westbrook, whichever one, and then the other one can play a solid off the ball. And then having another, stretch in Michael Porter Jr., having Aaron Gordon in that dunker spot, and having Jokic. I mean, Russell Westbrook has always played well with bigs. He's played well with Zubac. He's played well when he was on the Rockets themselves. Over in OKC with Steven Adams, him and Adams were like a perfect duo. So I think Jokic is a really good pairing with Russell Westbrook. That is finally the first real move that we see the Nuggets make in this offseason. Yes, they got Dario Saric, which adds some nice depth, but adding Russell Westbrook to this roster propels them even more back into that contention of when you're competing against the dynamic guards and Kyrie and Luka, when you're competing against those teams like the Lakers, for example. He has been a part of that Lakers organization. He knows the ins and outs of their offense and everything like that. The roster is not too much different from when he played with the Lakers. So that's what you got to look at. And just having depth. Even if he comes off the bench and is a spark plug, he's a perfect spark plug. He worked really well with the Clippers. I was honestly shocked that they let him go or that they allowed him to walk because I thought that he would be a good fit even still with the Clippers, with Kawhi and him running the show and James Harden over there. So yeah, I'm excited to see Russell Westbrook possibly getting his first ring ever and seeing how that changes the dynamic of his career and how he affects this Denver Nuggets roster. Moving on to the next team, we're going to talk about the Orlando Magic. This is Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. One issue that they clearly had was being able to stretch the floor. Now, what does Kentavious Caldwell do really well? He is able to stretch the floor and he can play defense, so it's a perfect pairing. He will provide a lot of defense for this organization as well as shoot the ball extremely well. As these other younger guys are developing too, the Cole Anthonys, the Anthony Blacks, so on and so forth, he will be able to mentor them and be a good veteran for this roster. I don't know if he is going to cause a clogging lane. Like, for instance, you look at that shooting guard spot with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and Gary Harris. Is there going to be spots for Anthony Black, for example? As he is still a young guy, is there going to be availability for him to grow into those roles? Now, of course, you see him, back up small forward as well. But Franz is going to be playing 38, 40 minutes a game, so is there going to be room for those younger guys? That's the big question mark that we've always seen with Orlando. There hasn't been any news on that Markelle Fultz signing yet, but as of right now, he's not on this roster. So I don't see him coming back, especially with the signing of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. KCP fits this roster a lot better, being able to stretch the floor, as that was their big killer. No one was able to shoot the 3 ball. No one was really able to play offense besides Paolo in the playoffs. So going and getting an offensive guy, I like that move a lot for Orlando. How it affects them, I still see them as, it really depends on that jump and that leap that we see from Paolo himself. I still see them as a middle-of-the-pack kind of Eastern Conference team. I think that this next draft could propel them a lot, but as of right now, I think that they're kind of that 4th-5th seed, just like they were this year. They're, right around 3 through 6 is where I see Orlando landing, competing for trying to get to the Eastern Conference Finals. And then depending on how Paolo and Franz develop this year, will really say a lot, as we go on more in this later season. Next up, we got the Philadelphia 76ers. Now, there's 2 for this roster. Obviously, there's Paul George. It's a big acquisition, but he's not the underrated move. I think the underrated move is Caleb Martin. You got him on a very good contract. He turned down a larger contract to stay with the Heat and ended up coming to Philly for a cheaper contract. Depth is a big thing here. You can never have too much depth. I like this lineup a lot of Tyrese, Kelly Oubre, Paul George, Caleb Martin, Joel Embiid. Could they use another legit power forward? Yeah, I think so. I think Caleb Martin's more of a 3 guy. Even Paul George, more of a 3 guy for sure. But if you switch things around, I could see them actually performing really well. Right now, they got Kyle Lowry and Eric Gordon on the roster for some depth. And then that other underrated move that we have here is Andre Drummond. We know Embiid's injury history. So we know he most likely... Alexa, stop. So we know that with Andre Drummond coming in, Embiid, it's okay for him to miss a few games, and you're not downgrading terribly, right? Obviously, Andre Drummond is not Joel Embiid, but what Andre Drummond can do is unlock another part of this offensive game where he'll rebound the crap out of the ball, and he'll be able to get the ball to the shooters, kick out, second, third chance point opportunity. Having Tyrese, Kelly Oubre, Paul George, Caleb Martin, and Andre Drummond, if Embiid is out, is still a really good roster. You have number 1 and number 2 options there if Embiid is out in Paul George and Tyrese Maxey. This roster's built to contend for a championship. Now, the health is the biggest question mark. Having Andre Drummond there definitely helps them, even if Embiid gets injured. And you always kind of want a backup that is kind of similar to your starting center. Now, of course, Drummond can't space the floor like Embiid can, but they're both big bodies. They both rebound, and they both are solid defenders. Obviously, Embiid a little bit better of a defender than Drummond, but it's not like, it's not anything crazy different. So, last team that we're going to be talking about here with an underrated move is the Miami Heat. The underrated move is Alec Burks. The Miami Heat are really good at doing a few things. They're really good at reviving players' careers, bringing in guys. Like, this is like the 3rd time Josh Richardson has been on the Heat, and he's played decently well for them in the past. They also are really good at drafting late and developing, i.e. Jaime Jaquez or, Bam Adebayo fell in his draft. Of course, they just drafted Ware this year. They have the veterans in Kevin Love. Thomas Bryant is still on this roster. Who knows what we're going to get out of Nikola Jovic this year, as well as Jimmy Butler is a huge question mark. But if you have depth, Alec Burks, Josh Richardson, Jaime Jaquez, Kevin Love off the bench, Duncan Robinson still on this roster. Like, Duncan Robinson, he was a G Leaguer. Like, these guys, they are just known for finding talent that isn't necessarily a diamond in the rough is what they're known for. They find that talent. They're really good at it. So overall, this roster, even though it doesn't look super great, for some reason the Heat, their roster doesn't ever look too great. It always looks like it's they always end up being like a 6th, 7th, 8th seed these last few seasons, and then they try and perform in the playoffs. Now, of course, Jimmy Butler with some injuries and all that definitely affected the Heat in this performance, but they were an 8th seed that made the finals with a very similar roster to what they have now. Tyler Hero, Jimmy Butler, Bam, Duncan Robinson, Kevin Love were all on this roster back then. So with that, you can never really count Miami out. And adding someone like Alec Burks, who's a spark plug off the bench, that's perfect. So it's a good fit. He really feels like Heat culture too. So overall, although I don't necessarily know if they're going to even make the playoffs this year because of the whole Jimmy Butler question mark, I do see them being a threat if Jimmy Butler is there with this current roster. Now, are they going to be some insane championship contending team? It, again, doesn't look like it on paper, but of course, they always are a scary team to play in the playoffs. So, if you guys did enjoy this kind of content, do me a huge favor. Smash the like button, subscribe to the YouTube channel, comment down below on what you think and who is going to be the scariest with their newest acquisition of here. What is the most underrated move? If I missed one, feel free to comment it down below. And, all right, guys, it's been another Heart Over Height episode. I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.